Hello, my name is Matthew Pfeiffer with MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, I create videos and content about toxic, narcissistically abusive relationships. If you have a question that you'd like for me to answer, make sure you send it to justaskmatt@MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Again, that is justaskmatt@MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Just make sure you keep that email 2 to 3 paragraphs max, and you're also very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. If it's too long, if it's too lengthy, unfortunately, I will not be able to get to it. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe notification and the bell notification so you're notified each and every time I upload a new video. I upload new videos on this channel 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And also, if you need more help outside of these videos, make sure you join my YouTube membership. I have a lot of great content, a lot of trainings, a lot of courses that I think that would be very beneficial to you. There's different tiers available. Some of them also include working with me and working with group sessions and that sort of thing. So make sure you check that out as well. With all that being said, let's get into today's video. So today's video comes from a person who is struggling with the thought of people thinking negatively of them. And so if you are someone who struggles with a narcissist, you know that you typically go through a smear campaign, and people who link up with narcissists typically struggle with codependency and people-pleasing behavior. And if you struggle with these type of characteristics and this type of disposition, oftentimes when people think of you as the villain in the story and people think of you as the bad person in the story, it is very hurtful, and sometimes it can cause harm to our self-esteem. And because people who struggle with codependency and people pleasing oftentimes want people to think of them as the good person, right? And it's a struggle to think that someone out there thinks ill of you. And so let's get into this situation. I know that there's a lot of people who have this struggle, so I think this will be helpful for a lot of people who are listening to this. And so let's get into this email. So this email reads, hey, Matt, I listened to all of your podcasts and they are all very helpful. Thank you very much. And so for those of you who don't know, I do have a podcast. It's called The Matt Pfeiffer Experience. You can actually watch it live here on YouTube every Wednesday evening, 9 p.m. Central. And you can interact with us. And if you can't make it, if you do miss it, that's okay. You can watch the replay. And if you prefer to listen to it, it's on all major podcast platforms, on Spotify, Apple Podcast, all those places. So make sure you tune in because there's a lot of information, I typically put out 2 episodes per week, every Monday and Friday, 1 solo episode and 1 with a guest as well. So make sure you check that out. I was married to a narcissist for 12 years and just finalized an awful drawn-out divorce a few months ago. No children, just fought over assets, and he was telling me I deserved nothing. And that's very, very common when you go through a divorce with a narcissist. They think that everything belongs to them, so there's no meeting in the middle. The same way that happens in when you're in the relationship with them, they want to use that as a form of punishment. I had an attorney who was adamant that I did no contact with him during the divorce. Very good for your attorney. It sounds like your attorney has an idea or has some strategies around narcissism. And a lot of attorneys don't, so it's good that this attorney does. So I listened. The last time I talked to him was over a year ago. She's talking about the narcissist here. The last time I talked to the narcissist was a year ago about our mutual friend's tragic death. Since then, no contact. And I'm very sorry for your loss. One thing that I do want to say to people who are struggling with this, who might go through this, where you're in no contact, someone passes away, unfortunately, stay no contact. Even in a situation where someone passes away, it's more likely, and I have a feeling if I talk to this person about the time that they actually did contact this person about this death, they will use even a situation like that to their advantage and cause even more harm. And so in this situation, I still would not advise someone to break no contact. And we're going to put a bookmark on that because that's going to come up a little bit later on in this email. This email continues. The background is I left him in November of 2020 and went immediately into a relationship with a narcissistic female. So this is more common than what people think, especially with the ladies. A lot of times they will leave a narcissistic male and they will get into a relationship with a female because what happens is that, unfortunately, and you see this all over social media, right? Where people will vilify one sex versus the other. Both men and women do it. So I'm not going to say that all women do this or all women or all men do this, but you see this all over social media. And for a lot of ladies, they will get into a relationship with another woman with the assumption that all men are narcissistic, which is not true. But also, what they're failing to realize is that there are a lot of narcissistic women. And what the problem is that when you struggle with people pleasing and codependency, the likelihood of you entering into another relationship like this, and I work with a lot of people who are part of the LGBTQ community, and and a lot of them were in heterosexual relationships previously, thinking that they were going to be in a non narcissistic relationship because it was same sex, and that's just not the case, right? And sometimes you can actually enter into a worse dynamic than what you were in before, right? But let's continue with this email. Of course, his smear campaign was, I cheated on him with a woman, but I heard your podcast about how common it is for empaths to start relationships to get out, which I now know I did because it did start with an emotional affair with this woman. When I first moved out, we tried marriage counseling for 4 months, where he could not admit his role in the toxic marriage, which included his drinking problems. He went to therapy 3 times on his own and said he didn't need it. I went 2 times a week for 3 months and now go bi-weekly. The rebound relationship ended, and now I am single and divorced and healing. This is a good thing, not a bad thing. The fact that you ended that other relationship and that you are taking time for yourself. We want to make sure that we regather, that we recollect ourselves, and we begin to restructure who you are as an individual. You have to understand that in a healthy relationship, it's 2 individual people within one relationship, right? So I would encourage, and you can definitely get into a healthy relationship. There's no question about that. But we have to be not a perfect person, but a healthier person ourselves, and understand what the dynamics about ourselves and the relationship that has led us into 2 relationships like this. But that can be done. This email continues. My question is, you talk about being your authentic self. And one thing to ask yourself is, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind? So she's referring to a podcast episode that I talk about how to restructure yourself into your authentic self, right? And so one of the things I tell people is that if you question your own identity, is to ask yourself, what type of legacy do you want to leave behind? What do you want people to say about you once, unfortunately, all of us eventually have to pass away? What do you want people to say about you? What do you want people to think about you? And if you struggle with your authentic self and having a personal identity, I want to encourage for you to check out that podcast episode, because it is very revealing of how you can become more authentic. I struggle with this because I am a loving empath, and it is so hard to know my ex-husband hates me and we can never talk again after I gave him 14 years of my life. He also took some of my closest friends with him, convincing them how terrible I am in his smear campaign. How do I reframe this to be okay with the unwanted negative legacy I will leave? So I'm going to pause here real quick, but the email continues. So one of the things we have to understand about your legacy and about good, healthy boundaries, when we are authentic, we are structuring healthy boundaries. And we have to understand that this isn't necessarily your legacy. There are going to be people, when you are an authentic person, you are going to piss people off, period. And we have got to be okay with people not liking you. They are allowed. There's a handful of times I actually defend the narcissist, and this is one of them. They are allowed to not like you. They're allowed to have their version of the story, even if that story is incorrect and even if that story is a lie. They're allowed to think whatever it is that they want. And this is the problem that happens with people who struggle with people pleasing codependency, where I get on them. We don't talk enough about how people who struggle with people pleasing codependency actually struggle with control. They struggle with controlling the way that other people think and the way that other people feel and the way that other people see them. And we have to begin to have actual conversations about how this is, guess what? Manipulative. Doesn't mean it's malicious, but it is manipulative. The core essence and the pure definition of manipulation is to change someone's perception of something, right? And a lot of times we, as codependents and as people pleasers, we're overly we're being overly nice, right, to make sure that other people see us in a certain way. But the problem here is that they actually don't like your authentic who you actually are. But here's the reality of it is they never did. The narcissist never did. And so when we become a more authentic version of ourselves, you actually you actually filter out the people who truly do love you versus the people who don't. And so as I don't care if it's an empath thing, I don't care any of those things. We have to give people permission to think whatever it is that they want about us. Even as a loving empath, guess what? You don't like everybody, right? So guess what? Everyone is not going to like you either. And so the legacy that you leave isn't necessarily for the people who don't like you, it's for the people who are around you, right? And so this is I'm going to get into this a little bit deeper here in a second, but this is the what we create, the legacy that we want to leave. And if someone doesn't like the legacy that you're leaving, they are welcome to go spend time with other people and go and doing things that that they do enjoy, and we allow that. Right, the 14 years of your life that you're talking about, right? They're not lost years. Guess what? We take every single one of those years, every single good moment, every single bad moment, and instead of looking at it as a failure, we look at it as lessons, right? Everything, right? There's no such thing as failure. Every single thing is a lesson. Every single thing we gain the wisdom, all of the wisdom and all of the knowledge that we gained from those 14 years. And now we can use it to our advantage, right? Let me get back into this email and then I'm going to wrap things up. Also, I just found out that his stepdad, who I had a relationship with for 14 years, died over a year ago. And even though my ex and I were talking at the time of his death, my ex never mentioned it. I want to send a card to my ex or to his mom, but because there is no contact, is it inappropriate and pointless? My bleeding heart wants to acknowledge the passing of someone who was important to me. So this is where I circle back to that bookmark that we were talking about, where they also had a mutual friend who passed away. This is the big problem with codependency and people pleasing. We are over reliant on somebody else for our own emotions. This is not your ex's responsibility. Sending a card would absolutely be pointless, right? Think about those 14 years. And this is what I was talking about with the lessons, right? If we were with a narcissist for 14 years, this person was not attentive to your emotions, right? I can tell you that for a fact with narcissistic abuse, right? That's one of the main issues with them. So sending a card to them, right, for your bleeding heart, which is what you said, is going to do nothing but more than likely cause more damage. Because when you reach out to a narcissist for emotional support or any type of support, it's more likely that they use that to attack that vulnerability, right? To suck you in. So we need to learn how to regulate our own emotions and to reach out to people who really actually do support us. So let me wrap all this up and let's talk about authenticity and how all of this all ties into people pleasing and that sort of thing. So imagine that your life is like a tree, right? And so you imagine, and not just any tree, but an apple tree, and a green apple tree. And so you have been catering to your ex, to your former friends, people who don't truly like green apples. But you are so obsessed with them enjoying the apples that people would come up to you and say, I don't like green apples, I like red apples. So then you would color that apple red and give it to them just to make sure that they're happy. Another person, I don't like apples at all. I like oranges. So you give that person an orange. And then meanwhile, guess what? The tree is withering and you don't like the fruit because the tree, which is you, is not taken care of. Meanwhile, guess what? The people that you're catering to don't like the apples anyway, right? And the people who are looking for good green apples also don't like the apples because they're not fresh and they're not taken care of. And you internally know this, but you're so worried about people who are surrounding the tree that you're not taking care of the tree. We need to reverse this. We need to take care of the tree. You need to take care of you first through self-love, through setting boundaries, and you need to produce fruit that you enjoy, right? The green apples, you need to enjoy it. You need to enjoy your emotions. You need to be able to set boundaries. You need to enjoy and put together a life that you enjoy, build a legacy that you enjoy. It doesn't matter what other people think. There's going to be some people who enjoy the legacy. There's going to be some people who do not. And what happens is that you enjoy the life and the fruit that you produce. And when someone comes up to you and says, I'm looking for red apples, guess what? They're at the wrong tree. They need to move on. They need to carry on to another tree that produces what it is that they're looking for. So if someone is coming to you and they're causing problems, and if someone is coming to you, guess what those are? Those are boundaries. Right? So produce the life and the legacy that you want to leave. And regardless if this is a former friend, an ex, I don't care if you spent 20 years with someone, 14 years with someone, if they don't appreciate the life that you are building, the legacy that you're living, they are at the wrong tree. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure that if you have a question that you have that you would like for me to answer, make sure you send it to Just Ask Matt at mattpfeiffercoaching.com. Again, that is Just Ask Matt at mattpfeiffercoaching.com. Just make sure you keep that email 2 to 3 paragraphs max, and you're also very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. If it's too long, if it's too lengthy, unfortunately, I will not be able to get to it. With all that, thank you very much. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.